Si vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Pretty much the theme of Discovery in a nutshell, so it's no surprise that this episode reflects that very heavily. Rick here on Certifiably Ingame, reviewing episode 8 of Star Trek Discovery, one more to go before the mid-season break. So, in a quick breakdown I guess, this episode has several story arcs, some continuing from previous episodes, some brand new, and some to portray aspects of characters that we don't normally get to see. 8 episodes in, and some of the more dramatic changes in personality shifts can be attributed to their sort of layered and developed characters that we're sort of only now really getting a handle on, or at least I am personally. And this episode did focus on the war aspect of Star Trek Discovery pretty well. It's sort of been absent in the past episodes, with Discovery practically doing its own thing, and it's always been this hero ship that warps in, saves the day and warps out, practically turning the tide of the war, which suits Lorca fine. But with the establishing scenes, we see that this isn't always the case. The Discovery itself is just a vessel, and it's just the spore drive that gives it an edge. The Klingons' cloaking technology, which at this stage is still called invisibility screening, sort of evens the playing field. And while they can't fire while cloaked, which is a big nod to common continuity, it does mean they can effectively drop in and drop out in a similar fashion. But they can do it in the middle of combat with very little preparation. The space visuals of Discovery continue to be pretty impressive, but I've got to think, when I was thinking of the Klingon War and the battles that must have been fought from Star Trek lore before any of this was even out, not quite what I pictured. Just as a personal preference, I want to see the old clunky D7s flying around, with an updated look, but I don't recognise any of these ships really. The Federation designs are still pretty solid. The updated tech and style of the show has never really bothered me. As I've always said, as long as it delivers a good compelling story, I'm able to overlook a lot of things. The Klingon designs not being one of them though I am getting used to them, I guess. I just have to picture them with hair all the time. Anyway, as mentioned, the USS Discovery fails to save the Gagarin, a Federation vessel that was completely outnumbered by Klingons. All the reinforcements across the sector on the Federation side were spontaneously hit as well, showing that the Klingons aren't just brute force Zerg-style tactics, they are actually planning things. In fact, it seems that the cloaking technology that General Cole is distributing to the Klingons is providing them with such an edge that they're actually back to winning again. This whole war keeps ping-ponging between which side has the advantage, which is a general sign that the war is not going to end anytime soon. So the Discovery bails, spore jumping away from the battle to survive and fight another day. They can't afford to lose the ship, of course. But we do get signs that the spore drive is having adverse effects on Stamets. I mean, we've seen his personality change in that weird reflection in the mirror, but this is something more tangible. He mistakes Tilly for the captain and is very disorientated upon stepping out of the chamber. He reverts back to his old snappy former self, but this is clearly done to try and dissuade her from probing. He's worried that something's wrong, he's aware something's up. When this gets addressed later on, he curiously describes it as what he knows changes after he exits the spore drive. 1 minute he's there, he's present, he knows what's going on, but then everything that he thinks he knows is different. Now this could be his mind just being overloaded by the fact that every time he's plugged in, he's effectively accessing this mycelium universe-spanning network, and it's just too much for him. But I like this other idea. I've always suspected that the spore drive taps into something deeper than just quantum mushrooms. The fact is that it's like tapping into things at a quantum level means it's messing with the fabric of the universe, and it could be what he knows is changing because he's seeing into alternate timelines and alternate realities, and the facts and lore of these different universes are jumbling up his memory. What he knows is changing, indicating that this is probably more than just some sort of memory lapse. This is probably going to be a deciding factor as to why the spore drive is eventually abandoned, as we all know it must be. So, anyway, on to plot thread number 2. In order to counteract the Klingons' cloaking devices, an away team has beamed down to a planet called Pavo, where the entire planet is a networked organism of sorts. Every life form on the planet adds to this melodic chorus, this signal, that's even being broadcast into space through a giant crystalline antenna, which as far as they can tell appears to be natural. Now we later soon learn that that's not the case. In short, the Federation plans to utilise this sound as a sort of sonar that they're going to use to try and ricochet off of cloaked vessels. Sort of a strange way of doing things, I guess. It would create sort of a detection field, in theory. But it's another time that the technology of the Star Trek Discovery series stems from nature. First you had the mycelium network and the spore drive, then the tardigrade acting as the navigator, and now natural crystalline objects acting as a detection grid, with the music of the forest powering it. At times, some of these plot threads feel more like an episode of Doctor Who than they do Star Trek. That's not a criticism, at least not from me. I'm a fan of Doctor Who, generally speaking. I'm just saying that the ideas are pretty out there, sort of very outside of the box. So, naturally, the planet's not actually as uninhabited as it seems. It's just that the Pavans, the native life forms, appear as ethereal blue spores. Again, I suppose it's no different than the original TOS doing the energy cloud monster every other episode, but there are other types of spores, guys. The blue sheen that everything had, the coloration of the leaves and the grass, did go a long way to making it feel like it was a completely alien planet. I found myself looking at the scenery, recognising it as forest, feeling it as familiar, but at the same time never feeling completely at ease. To Discovery's benefit here, Saru immediately adopts the diplomatic stance, telling Tyler to lower the gun, keep it pointed at the ground, and he attempts to communicate with them, which is going to take a while because their language is, well, they don't speak. Nevertheless, this is a strange new world and this is a new civilization, and the Federation's non-interference policy stands. This planet is already inhabited, clearly by an intelligent species that's aware of extraterrestrial life, because the signal they've been broadcasting through that crystalline tower is there to draw life to them. Probably because they're bound to the planet. As Saru quickly points out, they are the planet. They're everything on it, all the life forms together. The whole planet is in a state of harmony. This probably means that they can't leave it, so draw other life to them instead. Burnham and Tyler get a bit more character development here. I'm still not completely sold on their relationship and their chemistry. It's more interesting to note that outwardly Ash Tyler seems to project the air of a man that just wants to finish the war so he can go home, and Michael Burnham fully expects to return to prison once this is over. But in a believable twist, Tyler confides in Saru that he doesn't just want to win the war, he wants to hurt the Klingons, and he doesn't care what happens to him just so long as he can get, well, revenge. Speaking of Saru, he finds the background noise to be highly irritating, almost painful to him because his senses are heightened. He asks them if they can do anything about the background noise, and they bring him into harmony with the planet, it seems. They effectively attune him to it, making him fit in, making him part of the ecosystem. This has the benefit of removing the constant fear that Saru feels. Being evolved from a prey species, it's always there, it's always present. And it's completely understandable why he'd want to do without that. This is the first time he doesn't have that nagging in the back of his head, that itch that something dangerous is lurking around every corner. Now I do think it's a bit extreme, however, that he takes their communicators and destroys them. For him, this planet is effectively now bliss. He doesn't have to live as prey anymore here. And we get the old Star Trek trope of the crew member who's become brainwashed, in a sense. Although he's not completely brainwashed, he's just euphoric at his new state of being. So with Tyler acting as a distraction, Burnham goes off to set up the transmitter to convert the crystalline tower into the radar dish that the Federation need it to become. Saru tries to justify his new state of being to Tyler, but that quickly changes when he realises that Ash Tyler is deceiving him and that they intend to leave the planet. Saru in fact turns violent, pinning him to the floor and demanding to know what's going on. At first when this happened, my thoughts were, how is this guy commander again? He's completely neglecting his away team, his mission, he's turned hostile, and he's already admitted that he's not under their control. He's not being mind-washed. This is just him without fear, and he doesn't want to let go of it. He's being incredibly selfish here. But I guess I can attribute it to desperation. He's found something here, a sense of calm he wouldn't have elsewhere, and I do think it's a bit of an ironic twist that upon the realisation that he's probably going to lose this and go back to the war, he lashes out. He acts like cornered prey. He's acting in desperation, fueled by fear, once again. Whether he sees it or not, this is how he's behaving. So I'm a little torn, because on one hand, the acting on the portrayal was pretty good. It was believable, and I felt sympathy for Saru in this situation. I don't think it was actually too out of character considering what we know of him so far. But that's hard to tell because, of course, layers upon layers of character development get added on all the time. We don't really have a grounding sense for these characters. But on the flip side, he's a commander, he's been through Starfleet Academy. I understand his Kelpian mentality, but a commander, an XO of a starship. This isn't some anonymous mid-deck crewman who's a cadet or an ensign or an unknown who's just starting out on his Starfleet journey. Saru's been an officer for a long time, and I understand the bewitching sensations of the planet that he's finding himself on, but I can't quite get over the hurdle that he's supposed to be the XO. I think this matches up with his character and his personality, in which case, should he really be the XO of the ship? In the previous episodes we've seen he can handle it pretty well, but I don't know, it's just a bit of a shock to see him lose it all like this. Like I said, I'm in two minds about it. I mean, Starfleet crew members acting out isn't something Trek's never done before, so I'll throw this one over to you guys. What are your opinions on it? In short, I found Saru's actions to be believable and understandable for him and his species, but then that raises a whole lot of other questions. And the final plot thread that we have in this focuses around the Klingons, which actually I found quite interesting for this episode. L'Rell's motivations to me are still a bit of a mystery. At first she's petitioning Kol for the cloaking technology to add to her ships, but then it turns out she's doing this just to gain access to Admiral Cromwell, because apparently she wants to defect. That's sort of come out of nowhere, although she does sort of justify it by saying that Kol is the one that chased Vok out and he's perverting T'Kuvma's message about Klingon unity. Now that is one thing me and L'Rell do see eye to eye on. It's interesting to look at T'Kuvma as a character because he's been harkening back to the old Klingon beliefs, with some things going back to even pre-Kalis, like the Klingon mummification and the belief in the Black Fleet. Suffice to say, T'Kuvma's almost got this medieval approach to Klingon honour and valour that he's trying to bring back, which by the time of TNG we know is successful. Kol, on the other hand, sees these archaic practices as completely outdated. He's out for himself and his own house, the House of Kor. Which is kind of ironic because the House of Kor can directly trace its lineage back to the time of Kalis and to Kalis himself. This is probably why he gets a lot of leeway and a lot of Klingons default to him as the Commander-in-Chief. So whereas T'Kuvma is harkening back to these old medieval aspects of Klingon culture, Kol sort of epitomises everything that's wrong with Klingon society at this point in time. He's ambitious, he's focusing only on the benefit of his house, and he wants to dominate the entire Klingon Empire, probably positioning himself at its head eventually. And whereas Kalis and even T'Kuvma to some extent rallied support from like-minded individuals, Kol is buying loyalty with cloaking technology which he in turn stole from T'Kuvma. Not to mention he's a downright hypocrite. But I'll get to that in a minute. First off, L'Rell's escape plan with Admiral Cornwell completely fails and she's forced to kill her to maintain her cover. By the way, that's kill with a question mark. But like I said, I'm still a bit unclear as to her general motivations. I mean, I think she's being sincere when she says she wants to defect, but she is from a house renowned for its liars and its spy network, so it's hard to completely trust her. She does look around at all the dead bodies of T'Kuvma's crew that Kol has stashed away, presumably executed for refusing to follow him, though I don't know, perhaps they're a snack for the Klingons. You know, in case they get peckish and they've got no rations left. But I digress. She looks around at the bodies and, as far as we can tell, no one's watching, and she swears that she will have revenge on Kol. So, yes, she is sincere, she is looking to go over to the Federation side, but then what about Vok? Where does he fit into all this? If he's really been supplanted as a spy on Discovery, is she simply trying to reunite with him? To enact a further step of their plan? Probably. But again, that goes awry because Kol didn't buy her cover story for the escape attempt. So after inducting her into the house and then keeping her prisoner, he ominously says to show them what House Core does to liars. You know, this coming from the guy that marooned Vok after stealing out his crew from under him, after first feigning loyalty to Vok and to Kuvma's cause. Sure, be mean to those liars, you big damn hypocrite. I think he's going to get his comeuppance sooner rather than later, the honourless Batak. Because both the Discovery and the Klingon sarcophagus ship are on the way to the planet Pava. Because the natives there repurposed the transmitter for the Federation, but instead of sending out a sonar signal to detect cloaked Klingon vessels, they instead sent out a galactic friend request. Yay! Peace for all. They think they're helping, to be fair. But that was the episode. For me, although the premise of the episode was very Star Trek in its plots and narrative, nothing yet has come as close to capturing the Star Trek feel as Star Trek Discovery Episode 6 did. The visuals continue to be completely stellar, and I look forward to seeing more Federation designs. I'm curious to see what a redesigned Constitution would look like in the Discovery universe. Not saying I'm going to like it, but you gotta admit, you kinda want to see what it looks like too. Stamets' mystery is getting deeper, and the Klingon political climate's actually becoming more and more interesting. I just want to see more from the other houses and the other factions. By now we know what to expect from Star Trek Discovery. What remains to be seen is the overall direction that the series takes, and what sort of cliffhanger will be left on with the mid-season finale. I'm a little worried that the series hasn't done enough to make me care and actually like about these characters, but again there are some standouts for me. So I'll wrap it up there, because otherwise I'll be rambling along for a long time, and I've said long several times. Oh god, it's starting. I'll just end it here. Thanks for watching. I've been Rick, and I'll see you next time on the channel. Thanks for watching again, and goodbye.